Hello and welcome to Ask an Apologist. My name is Matthew Middleberg and I'm joined today by Alicia Wood and Mike Sherrard and our special guest, Paul Gould, Dr. Paul Gould at Palm Beach Atlantic University. And if this is your first time joining the live stream, welcome. This is something that we do once a month for you to get your questions answered. So if you have questions, if you want us to talk about a particular topic or a particular idea, you can put your questions in the comments, whether you're watching us on YouTube or on Facebook or on X. You can put your questions in there and we will do our best to address those. But we are so thrilled to have Dr. Paul Gould joining us today from Palm Beach Atlantic University, my former professor and a great friend of our ministry here at Apologetics Inc. So thank you so much for joining us today, Paul.
Thanks, Matthew. It's great to be with all of you. Look forward to our conversation.
Yeah, I've written a couple of great books, Cultural Apologetics, really helpful to me and our organization. And Paul, I don't know if you remember it, but when I was being offered the position, the president here, I called you and you gave me some really helpful advice. And I actually just passed on the advice you gave me to another friend in a different context.
Nice.
But you were helping me
remind me what that advice was. I might need it.
Yeah. It's like, well, I'll be passing back your own advice to you now, right? Yeah. It's like that's how the Lord uses us, isn't it? But you asked me the question, you said, what's your unfair advantage, or what's the organization's unfair advantage in the mission that you're on? That was a really insightful way to think about it, because I knew two things instantly. One was Dave Engelhardt, who's not on this call with us, but our executive director. I was like, he is an unfair advantage in ministry. He's going to make this work so much easier. But anyhow, enough of that, but just appreciate your work professionally and then even personally. You've been very kind to me and our organization, and we're grateful for that.
Thanks, Mike.
That's great. And personally, I've, of course, benefited so much from Paul Gould. I was looking for a master's program and found out that there was one at Palm Beach Atlantic University in philosophy of religion, and that Paul Copan was going to be teaching at it. So I was excited about that. And then I came down and I had to sit down with you as well, Paul. And suddenly I was like, wow, I'm excited for both of these Pauls to teach me. So it was a great program, and I learned immensely, and I use what I learned in my ministry every day. So thank you.
We missed having you here. We were just talking before we came on, just how you were the gatherer, and everybody you would bring everybody to go play pickleball and eat sushi. And we need more Matthew Middleberg here. So good job.
Great. So cool. Well, let's dive into some questions. And Mike, you brought up the book Cultural Apologetics, which has influenced the world of apologetics in a big way. And I think a lot of people talk about the goodness, beauty, and truth of the gospel. And Paul, you've really done a great job of explaining why that's important, and not just to argue for the truth of the gospel, but also for its goodness and beauty. So what do you think our culture, I guess at this moment, what do you think it struggles with, that Christianity is true, or believing that it is good?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I want to say both, but I think if I had to choose in terms of where they struggle today, I think I want to slightly lean toward the question of the desirability, whether Christianity is good and whether it is beautiful. And I think what I'm thinking there are maybe a couple things. I think that there's this real doubt that Jesus actually satisfies like the deep longings of the heart. And so this is a question about hope. Can we really place our faith in Jesus to meet the deepest longings of the heart for meaning, for love, for truth, for goodness, for beauty, for happiness? So I think that worry. I think there's also this question of relevancy that's kind of challenged today. Is Christianity itself really relevant to the questions that we're asking in culture? And then there's like this worry, like, maybe we don't always act much different than our non-believing neighbors. And so there's a real question, like, do I really want to be like these people who follow Christ? So I think take all that, like, yeah, of course, there's still this objection. Is Christianity really true? Is it really reasonable? Is it rational? But I wonder if it's slightly tipping toward this, well, I just don't want it for the, those reasons, or maybe a number of other reasons as well.
Yeah. So for years, I wondered, I was about to say, sorry, I'm not sorry. That's one of those polite things you say, right? I'm never sorry when I know that. For years, I thought partly the goodness piece was that Christians must just not be known very well, because it's kind of like, if your neighbor really knew you
Mm.
and you really were following Jesus, it's like the goodness of Christianity ought to be known. So I still wonder about that. But with recent events, and we keep talking about the Charlie Kirk effect, seeing, for example, Erica, his wife, forgive her
Mhm.
husband's killer, and seeing the memorial be, if for those, some have to wash out the political piece to it, but mostly, even despite people that might have an issue with the political side of it all, they saw it as a celebration. It wasn't just mourning. And so on
Mm.
display is the
Yeah.
Christian conviction that we grieve, but we don't grieve without hope. There's been a lot of response to seeing that says, I don't know enough about Christianity, but if that's
Mm.
what it is, I want it.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So I'm wondering, I agree with you. I think it's kind of been the tipping, and the other side is Christianity good, but I'm curious about what a public event like this and the ripple effects of it, if a lot of people are awakening to some of the
Yeah.
good elements of Christianity
Mm.
and how it's unique in a worldview or religious space.
Yeah, I'm wondering too. I used to, in fact, just this past week, I was in Colorado speaking to some gap year students at Summit Ministries, and I was talking about this disenchanted culture that we find ourselves in, and this need to kind of re-enchant ourselves with the help of with God and the Holy Spirit and the church. And one of the comments I made, and then I made it, and I'm like, well, maybe this isn't actually as true anymore. Is like this idea that we're kind of sliding towards apathy with the question of God. And I think that it's interesting, like if you go back like 20 years to when the new atheists were around, those were the ones that were arguing that Christianity is a delusion, right? The God delusion or something like that, with Richard Dawkins. And so there was this real charge that Christianity was not just unreasonable, but undesirable. And so there's responses by Christians, and there's this kind of debate. And then I think people kind of got tired of this, and we did truly enter into this period of apathy when it comes to the question of God. And so it's like this sliding toward sloth, right? This one of the 7 deadly sins, where we just don't really care about the God question. And that was like what I was talking about. And the minute I said it, I'm like, wait a minute, things might be changing. I'm thinking of, we have Justin Brierley coming to our campus in 2 weeks to talk about the surprising rebirth of belief in God. Some of these very same people who are new atheists 20 years ago are suddenly realizing the bankruptcy of that worldview and becoming Christians. And then thinking about, you mentioned the Charlie Kirk, I don't know if we want to call it the Charlie Kirk effect, but like just what took place since then, and the kinds of revivals and the kind of Spirit of God. Like, I don't know if there's the apathy anymore. So it's interesting. We're kind of at an interesting place, like culturally, like, which way will we go is great. Like your first question is great. We don't know. I would have said probably the goodness, but to be determined, right? We'll see where things go in the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's really, really true. And yeah, I am hoping that there is, I think I've seen it in my own life, just the Charlie Kirk effect, if we want to call it that, where the churches are just overflowing. My church, like, there's no parking on a Sunday morning anymore. And my young adults group, it was twice as many people came the week that happened as usual. And we had people receiving Christ. We had people coming to faith. I mean, it was incredible. So, and it still seems to be going. I mean, I've had more spiritual conversations in the last month with friends and than I've had for a long time. So, I think that God is moving. He's doing something pretty amazing, and we need to be able to answer those questions that people have that are still kind of doubts in their mind about the goodness of faith, the truth of Christianity, and kind of casting that vision. So how do you re-enchant the imagination? How do you paint this picture and help people to want Christianity to be true?
Yeah, that's good. I think I keep going back to 2 things when I think about. So if the idea is, to use the language disenchantment, if we find ourselves in this disenchanted age, what does that mean? First of all, and one way to kind of summarize that is that we just no longer see the world in its proper light. We don't see it for what it really is. And so when we describe the world, all too often, Christians, people of faith, will describe the world pretty much the way that everyone else does. They'll use words like mundane or ordinary or everyday. But if you think about it, that's just not the way the world is, right? The world is deeply mysterious. It's full of beauty and mystery and abundance. To use like the proper word, it's sacred or it's gift. And so how do we re-enchant ourselves? Like, and I would say, how do we provide space for the Holy Spirit to do that? I think two things. And the two things would be that we would learn to see and delight in the world the way that Jesus does. And that's a comment for those who are Christians. Like, we need to see the world in its proper light and then delight in it there. But then the second thing is that we would invite others to do the same too, to see and delight in the world the way Jesus does. And what we will find is that puts us in this posture of expectancy that, there is goodness to be had. There is beauty to be had. There is a truth to be had. And actually it finds its source in Christ. And so, yeah, that's the two ideas that keep coming back for me.
Wow. That kind of just cries out in my heart for more Christian art, right? More Christian beauty to be created, and as a way of kind of, as Lewis said, sneaking past our watchful dragons, as story does, as imagination does, and kind of showing people why Christianity is good and why the world is beautiful.
I'd love to unpack this, learn to see and delight more. I'm curious what falls in that. Some things are drawn to my mind, just even with what part of our staff being here, that one of the things we do every week is we have a meaningful prayer time together. And we do staff meeting once a month, but we do prayer meeting every week. And part of it is storytelling and sharing. And it's like in our ministry, it's a rhythm we've built in that helps us see and delight, not just long for that which we don't have. But Alicia, some of the things bring to mind, like when Jen Holland is telling some stories about her life and her kids, like Alicia just comes alive with life. It's just like we delight. So I don't know if you have anything to say to that, Alicia, but I'd just love to unpack this more, this seeing and delighting, and what is it? How do we learn to do that? I think there's maybe one way we do it, but I don't know what you think about this, Alicia, or what, but.
Well, I think, when we're talking about the good and we're talking about, because I kind of agree with you, Paul, in the sense of, is it true or is it good? And I'm kind of like, I definitely feel like we're in an era that's leaning more towards the good and leaning more towards, like you said, the beauty. Is there hope? Is this even what I want? Right. And so I think the reason why, just going back to what Mike said, I think the reason why I like Jen's stories, because they're always just great stories. And people watching don't know her, but she is a special woman, and she always has like the best stories, and her kids do just really fun stuff. But I do think that there is a connection beyond the okay, give me the evidence for this and give me the evidence for this, and that connection piece, because we're missing so much relational stuff in our culture anyways. We're missing it. It's not here. We're all on the phones. We're not talking and doing all that kind of thing and hanging out in the same way. So this connection piece is missing from our culture, and it's almost like, I wonder if that's a piece of what people are looking for. Like this God becomes that intimate, that filling that hole, that filling that relational. And maybe that's what people are seeking to find beauty. But either way, I think your analysis, I hadn't thought about the apathy piece, because that apathy did impact us over the last 20 years, whatever. People just were like, I don't care. But then they saw what life was like without caring. and they began to say, this is not working. And so I think delight, whether it is art, whether it is nature, our longing for more natural beauty, and whether it is music. Music has always been an influencer in our lives, no matter whether it's music that's good for you or negative for you. And so all of these other aspects, I think, do represent the different kind of longings that humanity have than just information about something.
Good. Yeah, here's so let me throw out a sentence that I've been thinking about, to this question, like, how do you see and delight in the world the way Jesus does? So here's a kind of pithy sentence. Let's see. Actually, let me give you, before I give the sentence. So like, there's two basic postures that I think we take fundamentally to the world, and depending on which posture, it's going to set us kind of on a trajectory. And then there's like 3 basic stories, and really there's like, that pretty much everyone can fall into one of these 3. And then those things will determine, here's the sentence. So what story we find ourselves in, and or how we lean, and the story we find ourselves in will determine who we become and how we behave, right? That's the sentence, right? So like in the 2 basic postures, you've got like this, I don't know, it's sometimes called the Promethean posture. It's this idea that we can master nature, we can master the world, and it's kind of like playing with God, right? And it's very consonant with like the scientific naturalistic worldview, where we seek to master our lives through science and technology. And we end up like in that process, we end up diminishing our experience of the world, and we end up becoming like very empty selves and thin selves. So like the story would be some version of naturalism, which today is expressing itself in terms of techno-utopianism. You've got the postmodern story, which is kind of expressing itself today in this idea that we're a blank slate, and that we can, play God and just become whoever we want to be. There's sort of, through this like sort of will to power, and we can kind of carve our own meaning into this world that's a meaningless world. Like those are the 2 sort of competing stories on the Promethean side. And then there's this other posture, this other story. The other posture would be one of like receiving, accepting, or accepting, appreciating reality, right? Accepting the givenness of the world. And then the Christian story, right? That we find ourselves as creatures that receive all things as gift from God. And that story and that posture, we lean into Christ each day, and it sets us on this journey to become more like Christ. And in becoming more like Christ, there's like freedom. We lean, right? We're not always perfect, but Lord, just help me to lean in this direction. And in doing that, we learn how we should act, and we become a certain kind of person. And so I've been thinking a lot about that in terms like how do we actually learn to see and learn to delight in the world the way Jesus does? Well, it all depends on our posture, and it depends on the story we find ourselves in, and then the daily leaning, in the right direction. So.
Yeah, that's good. That's something I try myself, even just briefly before we were praying, using that language gift. Because, hey, do y'all hear that? Or am I just hearing stuff?
Sorry, that's on my side.
Okay. I asked just so I know I'm not going crazy, because it sounded like a train was just rolling through here.
It's probably a ship. Some big
Welcome to my reality all day long.
So what was it, a train?
Construction upstairs.
Okay.
No, it's construction upstairs. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll move on. I don't even know what I was saying. Oh, practicing the language of gift, because we are just so conditioned to have a different posture that we just don't view life through a lens or a posture of receiving and recognizing things as gifts that they are, and not maybe wages that we've earned or duties that we have to attend to, or schedules, or check boxes that we have to get done. But like this time, just the 4 of us together, outside of whatever good may come from this itself is a gift. This friendship, vocational friendship, it is a gift. And to train yourself that way and develop, that better posture is, I think, very, very helpful. Hard to do, but very helpful.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about, this picture. We can come back to this. And if people want to ask more questions on this too, remember, this is a live stream. So if you have questions you want to ask, put them in the chat and we'll do our best to answer. But, I also love, Paul, how you're an apologist and a philosopher, and you're an apologist for Christian philosophy and the value of it and the importance of it. So let me just ask kind of an open-ended question. What is the value of Christian philosophy? Why do we need philosophy? Why not just do theology?
Yeah, no. Yeah, I like how you phrase that. That seems right. And I think, okay, so you could start like, in a freshman seminar, we sometimes start with the etymology of the word philosophy. Like, what is it comes from 2 Greek words, philo, which is the Greek word for love, Sophia, which is the Greek word for wisdom. So often what we would tell our freshman students is that philosophy is the love of wisdom. What's interesting, though, if you read like Plato's Republic, Plato's way more scandalous about philosophy. He actually describes the philosopher as wisdom's lover, right? That we're moved with this passion to discover wisdom, and we do everything we can to get in the path of wisdom. And so you take that idea And you kind of couple that with this beautiful phrase in Scripture where we read in Colossians 2:3 that in Christ are hidden all treasures of wisdom and knowledge. And I would say there's, first of all, a tight connection between our faith and philosophy. That'd be the first thing I'd want to say, because of who Christ is, like the source of all wisdom and knowledge. The second thing I'd want to say is, look, everybody's already a philosopher, whether they know it or not. We have views about God, we have views about the self, we have views about the world. And as C.S. Lewis says in some other context, but it's true to this one as well, like we don't have any choice on whether or not we are a philosopher. We don't have any choice on whether or not we're thinkers. That's just how we were made. We're rational animals, as Aristotle would put it. And so the only choice we have is whether we will be good thinkers or good philosophers or bad ones. And so I'm passionate about philosophy because wisdom and knowledge are necessary conditions for flourishing, right? If wisdom is something like understanding the grain of reality and then living our lives according to that grain, right? That's how we flourish. That's how we find genuine happiness. And so I think that philosophy is not only the most important or practical, right? So yeah, apologists for philosophy, most practical thing, but it's the way that we answer these fundamental questions that everyone has been asking, these perennial questions about life and meaning and happiness and love and purpose. That's what we do in the discipline as we love or pursue, wisdom for the flourishing of all. So yeah, super important. That's why I love teaching this stuff.
Can I say that was like the best definition and explanation of philosophy I've ever heard? That was so good.
Oh, thank you. Good.
Well, and you know what's wild about that is there was a time, and it was a short time, and I don't know why they did this. I don't know if you remember this, Paul, but right around 2012, 2013, there was this movement in the New Atheism to eradicate philosophy. It was a really bizarre blip that they had because Daniel Dennett, who was one of them, was a philosopher.
Right. Yeah.
But it was coming out of like Dawkins and Lawrence Krauss, I think, type thing that we're saying we need to eradicate philosophy. And it was such a weird thing. We were like, none of us really understood why they were saying this. And it didn't last long anyways. And it didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But when you listen to your whole definition about the loving of wisdom and truth and all of these things, and you're like, okay, so you want to eradicate knowledge and wisdom and the ability. I like how you said like the grain of, you said grain of life or the whatever this kind of thing that like pierces through. And it's like, wow, what a wild thing to eradicate when actually at the same time you're advocating for, knowledge is found over here and not over there. And yet you're saying we want to eradicate. So it was just a whole contradiction looking at it in the light of what you just said.
That's interesting.
So yeah, that was a really great explanation of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the way to put this? There are some guests that I make sure I have my notebook for so I can take notes. And after the podcast we did, Paul, where you were on my show, I was like, man, I should have been taking notes during this. So I won't make that mistake again. But understanding and living according to the grain of reality. Yeah. Oh, what a great way to think about it.
Yeah, you know what Alicia said. So I'll have to go look at this, what they were trying to do back in, a couple of years ago. That's interesting. It reminds me though, and you guys will know this, but like the Screw Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis and the first letter, fictional letter between like the senior devil to the junior devil in that book that C.S. Lewis writes, this fictional account of the devil training a junior devil to like keep people from Christ, basically. But in that first letter, it's just this brilliant, Lewis is writing this brilliant passage where he says to the junior devil, your job is to fix the patient, the person they're trying to keep from Christ, fix the patient on the stream of immediate sensual experience. And then he said, like keep them fixed on the sensate, the physical, the material. And then he says, otherwise, the patient will realize that they can reason and that they can win on their own grounds, and you'll awaken them up to these universal matters. And so interesting. Whatever Dennett and Krauss and Dawkins or whatever they're trying to do, they're trying to like keep us focused on the sensate, the physical, the material, because if we start to think about these universal matters, what we realize is that, I think pretty clearly that it points everything into, this deeper reality that God exists and is the source of all these things. So yeah, really interesting. I'll have to check that out.
It was like a debate at the Oxford Union back when I was in school there. And so it was like, is philosophy dead? I think was the question.
Interesting.
And so they had two people saying yes and two people saying no. Yeah. And I think Dawkins and Crew were on the yes side. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And then it was like, whoever, I forget who was in the other. I have to go look it all up and go back and look at my notes. But yeah, really, really wild stuff, because especially when one of my favorite painting is Raphael's School of Athens.
Yes.
Right. And it hangs in my like office area, and I love it, because all it is a group of philosophers, scientists, mathematicians, and you look at the picture and they come from different parts of the world, male and female. They don't, and yet they're all just engaging with idea and reason and thinking through these things, right? And one of the things that I think sometimes concerns me with the culture, even like kind of where we're in, is if we become a culture that is all about our feelings. Or so it's interesting how you like with essential. I guess essential is how Lewis is putting in that example. But even just following our feelings and doing whatever is, and that becomes our guiding path. That becomes our moral guideline, and we leave the mind at the door and don't want to pick it back up. Then I'm like, I'm effectively out of a job, because all I do is deal with the reason. And if you're going to become people that don't reason and don't want to seek wisdom and don't want to seek truth, I'm not going to be able to help you at all, because outside of trying to pull your emotions back into that realm. But ultimately, that's what I'm going to want you to do. I don't want you just to, live kind of hedonistically, just kind of fulfilling whatever desires you have. So I think that this idea of loving wisdom, I think, is a beautiful way that we need to think about when we're engaged with people.
Good. Yeah, that reminds me of just one more thing. What you said that's so interesting about the debate over is philosophy dead. Probably around that same time, we had Stephen Hawking's last book with Leonard Mlodinow called The Grand Design, that came out, I think, right around that time, 2010, 2011, 2012, somewhere in there. But what was so interesting about that book is he literally said that philosophy is dead and physics is the new torchbearer of knowledge, right? That was the whole first half of the book.
Right.
But what's so ironic, and I find this ironic in all these discussions where there's some kind of question like that, is that then the whole second half of that book was really poor philosophical statements about the nature of reality, right? And it's like, that's the reality. We can't avoid philosophy, right? If we're going to say something like the scientist, that those who adopt scientism, right, this view that science is the only source of truth, right, those are philosophical claims about the nature of knowledge.
That's why they want philosophy to be dead. It's so their bad philosophy can go unnoticed.
Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, I just find them, really interesting. That's why I do, to go back to like the original question that Matthew asked, like, philosophy is so important because it's inescapable. We are creatures, for whatever reason, we are creatures that are created to ask questions. And if you go back to even Aristotle, right, he very first sentence in the Metaphysics, he says that humans desire to know, right? We've been created and we want to know things. And both him and Plato, since you referenced one of my favorite paintings, The School of Athens by Raphael, both of them thought that philosophy begins in wonder, right? And wonder is like this encounter with reality, the weightiness of reality. And then it's this invitation to quest and to discover and accommodate, to expand our view of reality to accommodate this encounter with the weightiness of reality. And that's like the lifeblood of philosophy. And that's what we're missing on these fixing our eyes on the stream of sensual experience. We miss the wonder of it all, the wonder-filled reality that is the world that God created. So yeah, philosophy is super important to help people see, I think. Man,
that's so good. It reminds me, and I don't know if Matthew's gone. He hasn't texted me to say he's
talking to the construction people or something.
Saying, get off my roof. Who are you? Why are you here? But I remember years ago in my undergraduate, we had to, it was either a book, an article, I forget, but then write a paper to respond to this idea of, does anybody really need theology, or who needs theology? But it was a simple idea that I was like, oh my gosh, yes, this is so good. But it's like, it's not a question of is theology useful or not. The real question is, it's inescapable.
Right.
You're either a good theologian or a bad theologian. And the same idea is with philosophy. It's unavoidable. It's inescapable. You're either good at it or you're bad at it. And since you can't escape it, you might as well be good at it.
Well, so one of my teachers at Oxford told me, and it brought some solace to me. So we're going to see if you're going to disturb my solace with this,
Okay.
Paul. But they told me that in order to understand like philosophy, you like need to read it like 7 times.
Mm.
Or, in other words, you got to read the material over and over and over and over again, right?
Mhm.
And to me, that was great because I felt like, why is it that it takes me 2 hours to get through 2 paragraphs?
Yeah.
Like, why can't I get through? And you kind of that kind of reassured me that it's okay to like take your time, stop, think, and you got to reread, and let it process. What do you think, Paul? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that that's great. Sometimes, so right now I'm teaching metaphysics in my graduate class, and metaphysics is like the philosophical study of the nature and structure of reality. And we're reading contemporary literature on that, and it's super technical, and it's really like hard. Oh, hey, we only have 20 pages to read this week, but there's, like you said, like every paragraph is packed dense. And so I tell my students, especially those who are new to philosophy, that you usually need to read something like this 3 times at least, minimum, to kind of get going. You read it like once as a tourist, just kind of get the lay of the land, see what's going on as best you can. And then the next time you read it more as a critic and trying to understand the arguments. And then finally you read it as a judge and, standing over it and trying to figure out what you think for yourself. And that's like minimum. And even for me, like I teach these things every year, but every year I've got to like re-engage and rethink and continue to press my own self. So yeah, philosophy is hard, but it's rewarding in that way because reality is complex and it's beautiful and it's mysterious and the God behind it all, right, is complex and beautiful and mysterious. And so yes, it's hard, but it's worth it. So yeah, you're right on target.
Yeah. Welcome back, Matthew.
I had to yeah, sorry about that. I had to leave. We were looking for my roommate who is 94 years old, and thankfully we found her. She's all good.
Okay,
but, yes,
Important.
she was with a different caretaker. So, but what you just said there, Paul, I think is gold, absolute gold when it comes to understanding something new, when it comes to reading something new, because so often people, when they try to read a book that's dense or that's difficult, they just give up because they're trying to understand it on a first pass. They're trying to digest it. They're trying to judge it. They're trying to critique it, all of that. And I had to learn that from you of this, the first time you read it, just read it. Just go through, just la, 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 just try to get the, general context and then go back through and go, okay, now what does this actually mean? Okay, maybe I understand a little bit more, and then go back through it again and go, okay, I agree with this, I don't agree with that. And not that you have to do with that with everything. Of course, if you're reading a devotional book or something, you should be able to read it through on the first time and understand it. But if it's something that's more difficult, there's no shame in just reading through without understanding it first, and then going back through it and just doing that. And that was the only way I could understand some of those metaphysics papers, where they're talking about these concepts that I just have never even thought of before. And yet by the final read through, it's like, okay, no, I see what's happening here. Like I understand it.
So are those 3
really
read as a tourist, read as a critic, then read as a judge?
I think I got the second one wrong, but definitely tourist and judge. And then the second one's something like just
detective.
What is it?
Detective.
That's it. Yes, detective. Trying to just figure out what's going on. Thank you. That was it. Yeah. So
Jay Warner Wallace's ears just perked up.
Yeah.
He said, "What? Somebody say me to
somebody call me?" Yeah.
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 It's like the bat symbol just flashed in the sky. He heard it. He heard the symbol flashing in the sky. That makes a lot of sense. Good job, Mike.
You guys may have gotten to this while I was away, but I wanted to ask, what do you do with the Christians who are anti-philosophy and say, well, Paul says that philosophy is man-made and deceitful, and all we need is the Bible to tell us what to do. And
Paul said that, did he?
Study my systematic theologians, and yeah, he said that, right?
Yeah,
maybe.
Good. Yeah, I would be with Michael on that one. That's not quite how I read Colossians 2:9, right? Yeah. So, okay. I would say I would work in layers, right? So I would begin maybe with just the great commandment. What does Jesus say in Matthew 22:37-39? And other places, we are to love God with all of our being, right? All of our mind, all of our soul, all of our strength, all of our body. And so like, there's this very clear call that we're called to love God with in every way that God has made us. We're called to love him. And that includes our minds. God has made us as rational animals, as human persons that have intellects and a will. And so we're called to use it. Maybe we could even push from there to the idea of the nature of the spiritual battle that we're to be engaged in, right? I think a lot of times Christians think that the spiritual battle is something like, roaring lions that are waiting to devour you if you step off the path, as I think it's First Peter somewhere says, or maybe like, the armor of God in Ephesians 6. But I think those are all, of course, important, but the spiritual battle also includes engaging the false ideas that set themselves up against the knowledge of God. And we see that in 1 Corinthians 10:3-5. And so like, that's actually part of the battle God has called us to, is like to demolish the false ideas and the arguments. But notice, even if you go to that passage in 1 Corinthians 10, it doesn't say, like we might think if I were writing this, it'd say that set themselves up against the power of God. But it doesn't say that. It says set them up against the knowledge of God, these arguments that set themselves up against that. So we're to be men and women who submit our minds to this plumb line of Scripture and engage those.
Yeah, it's interesting on that point real quick. A lot of times you see the contrast of, we don't need arguments because we're fighting a battle of spiritual warfare. Right. But that whole, what you just referenced, 2 Corinthians 10:5, the context is spiritual warfare, recognizing that the fundamental weapon of our enemy is deceit. Ever from the beginning, he's been a liar, been twisting the truth. And that's why Paul said, therefore we destroy arguments in anything that, how's it finish? How does it finish? I just drew a blank.
Raised up against the knowledge of God. Yep.
Thank you. There you go.
Of God.
Yeah. Thanks. It's 2 Corinthians 10. And then I think there's this misconception, like you guys I'm assuming you guys might come into this a lot too, like in the church, right? If you're going to be an intellectual Christian, if you're going to think about these things deeply, there's this like misconception that your spirituality is so dry, you can light a match on it, right? That you can't be both, a full head and a full heart. And that's a dichotomy that's nowhere to be found in Scripture, right? Like we're called to love God with head and heart, and that flows into helping hands. And so, and ready feet and all of that. And so, the passage that Matthew was sort of in jest referring to just simply doesn't say that we should give up on philosophy. It just says that we would not be beholden to worldly philosophies, right? All of us are philosophers. Every one of us has a philosophy, to go back to what we talked about earlier. So we've just got to press against this rampant anti-intellectualism in the church, right? And to be as bold as Paul, like it's a sin, and it's not how God has made us to flourish. We're called to love him with all of our being. And so that's where I would start on that one.
Yeah, that's good. Well, and I think when you read Scripture, especially the epistles of Paul, you just see he's doing philosophy. I mean, he's giving counter arguments, and he's not just appealing to, well, thus saith the Lord. He's explaining ideas and concepts and drawing distinctions and doing all these work that philosophers do. And then look at Jesus in the Gospels. Jesus is a philosopher, as we read in one of our classes, that Jesus is doing philosophy. He's explaining how to live in the way of wisdom. And I think when you understand that philosophy is not just an armchair speculation, but it's a way of life, then you understand why Jesus is a philosopher and why he's teaching philosophy as well.
Yeah.
And that's something that we've talked about a lot, just this misconception that philosophy is something that, academic to do in an ivory tower that's unrelated to the lives of normal people. It's like, no, actually, we're all doing philosophy all the time.
Right. Yeah, it can be, right? I mean, people wonder why. Sometimes it seems very remote, but even in the class that I'm teaching now, which is on, like I said, metaphysics, like we're walking step by step through like really technical stuff. And today we talked about propositions, and you might wonder, why are we talking about propositions? And, what is a sentence, and what is a proposition, and how does that represent the world? And so, but notice, like, we're talking about this feature of reality, a proposition, which is like the meaning, the content, the meaningful content within sentences. But like it opens up this whole world, and it presses us, like by the end of the class where we've connected it to God as like these propositions are divine ideas, and then we have this whole model that like blows your mind, like, wait a minute, okay, this is crazy, but and we care about these things. So like it might seem like you're over here talking about something that doesn't connect, but at the end of the day, everything, all these deep questions of metaphysics become theological, right? And when we have our mature theory of the world, which is what we do in science, it's what we do in philosophy, it's what we do in theology, these things eventually will connect up to these questions of ultimate reality, and that's why it's so important.
Well, and just to bring that particular issue to ground level, I mean, the idea that propositions, that sentences are bearers of propositions, and that it's the propositions themselves that matter. That's why we can read the Bible in different languages and still understand God's truth. You don't have to. We're not like Muslims who say you have to learn the Quran in Arabic in order to really understand it. We say no. You can translate it into a different language and still understand God's truth that he's communicating through these different languages, because those propositions are real and they actually exist. So,
and it presses you, like, what kind of world do we find ourselves in that has propositions or that has ideas or concepts, right? And like, one of the favorite things, it's on this topic, so this is why you brought it up, but like, what is so I identify propositions with divine thoughts, and I identify concepts with divine ideas, and then like and there's a longer story there, but like one thing you see in scripture are all this language about, like, in Psalm 139, where it talks about how, like, I knew you before you were born, or Jeremiah 1:5, where you read that, I had you in mind for this purpose before you were born. And then in the philosophical seminar room, you ask the question, like, what's the ontology required to make those sentences true, right? And it just to press into that question leads us to these grand scale models about God, who has an idea of you, and he creates you according to this idea that he has in mind before you exist, right? And it just, again, philosophy begins in wonder, but it actually ends in wonder too. This is one of the great things I've learned from my philosopher friend Ross Inman. Like wonder is the lifeblood of philosophy, right? And it's the lifeblood of our lives, really, right? Because God is this perpetual wonder that never ceases to amaze us, right? We might get tired of things, but we'll never tire of the divine being. And so that's why I love this stuff.
That's great.
I'm ready to go back to school.
Yeah.
Come join. I want to sit in your class. I want to sit in your class, Paul.
Yeah.
That's great. We got a good comment from Anna Richards here. 2 Corinthians 10:5 is crucial. And then you said, realizing not all your thoughts are your thoughts, and that you don't have to just accept them is huge. That's good to think about what you're thinking, and not to just accept it, but to consider with wisdom what your thoughts are. And then you say, anyone I end up in a real conversation with who is struggling, I always say, think about what you're thinking about as a starting point. I always say, doubt your doubts. If you're doubting your faith, doubt your doubts.
This is so good and so funny. My son Conrad, who's 11, needs to sanctify his reasoning and arguing powers quickly in our household, but there's also parts that are just so lovable and delightful. We're driving home from baseball practice last night, and it's relevant to Anna's point here. Think about what you're thinking about. Conrad is real keen on this. Think about what you're saying. He and a teammate of his got into some silly argument where his teammate said, it's not the archer. It's not about the arrow. It's about the archer. And Conrad goes, the arrow's kind of important too. And it was this hilarious argument that they get into because he's trying to make the point that because they're playing baseball, it's like, it doesn't matter how good the bat is. It's just the batter, it's you that makes it. And Conrad's like, no, the arrow's kind of important too. It's going to be hard to kill somebody as an archer without an arrow. So it's kind of like, think about what you're actually saying. Anyhow, I just want to find a way to brag about my kids. That's all I'm doing here.
No, it's a great comment, Anna. Thanks for putting that out there. I definitely like that.
Now, Paul, you're an expert in a lot of different fields, but one thing that you've kind of worked a lot on is this contemporary Christian Platonism. can you just kind of explain what that is and why it's true? And I know it has some kind of links to what we were talking about with
Yeah.
propositions and ideas and things like that. But yeah, just give us a little insight into your world on that and
Okay.
why you're
I'll
passionate
try.
about
I'll
it.
try in like 30 seconds. Yeah. So
Yeah.
one thing I learned from J.P. Moreland, it's just captured my mind as I think about philosophy, is he said, if we want to be good thinkers, we need to learn to make distinctions. And if we want to be good teachers, we need to learn to teach distinctions. I know, Matthew, you've probably heard me say that 1,000 times. But let me make some distinctions to get to the thing that I'm most interested in. Right? You could distinguish what I would call traditional Platonism from contemporary Platonism, and that's an important distinction there. Traditional Platonism would be like the Platonism of Plato, right? The world of forms, eternal forms, and the shadowlands that are less real than the intelligible realm. It would be the diminishment of the body and the denigration of the body and things like that. I'm not interested in I'm interested in traditional Platonism, but that's not the thing I'm interested in defending, right? That's not what I'm talking about. So let's move on to contemporary Platonism. Contemporary Platonism in the philosophical debate is a debate over whether or not abstract objects exist. So again, abstract objects are things that exist just like concrete objects. So this is a concrete object that exists in space and time, right? You can hold it, you can feel it. That's what we would call a concrete object. It has certain causal powers and things like that. Abstract objects would be things that exist that are just as real as concrete objects, but they're not in space and time. And since we talked about it, propositions would be a great example of an abstract object. Other things would be properties and numbers and more arcane things like possible worlds and relations and things like that. So there's a real debate. And since Alicia mentioned it, the School of Athens is a great picture to kind of capture this, where right in the middle of that picture, you have Aristotle, who's pointing down, and then you have Plato, who's pointing up, right? Yeah. And so the idea is Aristotle's like, no, fundamental reality is down here. And Plato's like, no, fundamental reality is up in the heights. And I'm with Team Plato on that when it comes to these abstract objects. But I'm not just interested in contemporary Platonism. I'm interested in contemporary Christian Platonism. So that's the third distinction. And that's just the view that the triune God exists and abstract objects exist. And so, long story short, my dissertation was trying to bring Platonism about abstract objects into concert with traditional Christian commitments. And then there's like thin and thick versions of contemporary Christian Platonism. I go for kind of a thicker version that borrows some things from Plato in terms of a participatory relationship between the sacred realm and the secular or the natural realm, because I think that gets you some of this like sacramental view of the world that we're actually talking about earlier when we talked about re-enchantment and seeing and delighting. But yeah, so that's a little bit. I'll stop there because maybe that's enough, but that's the kind of contemporary Christian Platonism that I'm interested in defending.
And is it when you say abstract objects exist, the triune objects exist? Do you say the abstract
triune God?
objects?
Sorry, the triune God exists. Yeah,
I probably said it wrong there.
Okay.
That those abstract objects exist within the mind of God, or they exist in some way outside of God or separate from Him? How would you?
So I'm kind of a hybrid view on that. So there's, again, this is a longer debate, but I put some abstract objects in the mind of God. In fact, I already mentioned earlier that I just identify propositions with divine thoughts and concepts with divine ideas. So some of those abstracta I locate in the divine mind, and there's a very rich Christian tradition doing that. Augustine did that, Aquinas probably too. On the other hand, I do put some abstract objects outside of the divine mind, and I put them in a realm distinct from God, just like we would put the universe in a realm distinct from God. And the thing mainly that I think needs to go outside is properties. So the property of being red, property of being human. There'll be an idea, but that idea is going to correspond to this abstract object, this property that's going to feature into our world, right? These properties that characterize our world and structure our world. Those things are going to be created by God and outside God. And here I enter a very long and detailed discussion, but that's kind of what I do. Yeah.
That's very cool. Well, and it's fascinating to kind of just learn about these concepts, and then to learn about like the ways that they impact our faith or impact our reality. And sometimes there's not a just one-to-one link. Sometimes it's a chain
Mhm.
of being, if
Mhm.
you will, to lead to that.
Well, and
But
it's just
um
in it. I
yeah.
mean, interesting, but so important too. And so, anyone listening this,
Mm.
wherever they're at in life, be encouraged to become a better philosopher. If you're young or old or whatever, go pursue a degree like this, because here's like so far downstream where it becomes practical. Just yesterday, was it yesterday?
Mm.
Yeah, it was yesterday. I was doing a chapel at a Christian high school, and I'm giving a talk on, is there a design for our sexuality? And I love this about the next generation, because that didn't matter. During the
Mhm.
Q&A, it was, why do Buddhists say you can be Christian at the same time?
Nice. Yeah.
I love it. It's like, whatever's on their mind, they're going to ask.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, Buddhism and Christianity diverge from what fundamental reality really is. Buddhism would say that that life is illusory, and
Mhm.
our desires and our egos, all these things distort it, and everything is just an illusion. And enlightenment means seeing past that illusion. Of course, they never say what you eventually see. You just end up in an endless cycle of seeing through something, which C.S. Lewis points out is entirely futile. The point of seeing through something is to see something on the other side. Seeing through everything is the same thing as not seeing, and that's one of the problems with Buddhism and a
Mhm.
lot of this New Age
Yeah.
spirituality. So it's a disagreement here over what is fundamental reality. And Christianity says, no, there is something to whatever degree you see through something, you're going to see the truth. That fundamentally what's broken in this world is sin, and there's one road of redemption. So anyways, this is where
Mm.
philosophy is just so important and
Yeah.
downstream so practical that it helps me, for example, answer a middle school kid who's confused about different world religions and whatnot. And of course, I didn't give him a philosophical lecture, I was able to break it down, but philosophy is unavoidable. It's incredibly relevant, and it's practical, and it's useful with sixth graders.
Mm. Good.
All right, I got a little carried away there.
Another, no, that's great. I think another misconception that people have about philosophy is represented by the joke that a lot of people say is, what's the difference between a philosopher and a large pizza? A large pizza can feed a family of four.
Yeah.
Um,
Tell that joke
and
often.
so
Yeah.
there's
Good
this
joke.
idea of, oh, I saw another meme too where it was like a father and a daughter. He's like, hey, did you hear about the new philosophy factory they're opening up in town? Maybe you can get a job there.
That's awesome.
And
Yeah.
so there's this idea that there's no jobs, there's no practical kind of element to philosophy. But is this true, Paul? Is this factual or not?
You mean about the pepperoni pizza? Yes. No. Yeah. Feeding the family of four. Yeah. I mean, so those are the jokes that hit close to home, right? Because there's, I mean, it is true in a sense. So, like, on one hand, like, what are you going to do with the philosophy degree, right? What is the job you're going to do? And usually the answer will be like, well, you're going to teach. And if you're not going to teach, you're going to do something like what you guys do, right? Where you're using your mind and you're communicating, or things like that. And those jobs are hard to come by, and they're not well paid. So there is the pizza pepperoni joke does kind of hit to home there. But like, if you expand out from that, so I just want to say two things. If you expand out from that, that's really a question about the purpose of the university and the difficulty with the humanities in general right now, right? There's this large scale debate, like, what is the purpose of the university? And right now, the idea is that if you can't offer some non-cognitive benefit, well, then your discipline isn't worthy of investment, right? And so we're focused on the stems, and the Christian liberal arts tradition, or just the liberal arts tradition in general, is minimized because it doesn't bring in the money, and we don't see the non-cognitive benefit, right? And notice, though, part of the problem is because we've ceased to remember what the university is for, right? Traditionally, there's this wonderful article by Wendell Berry. It's in a book called Home Economics. So, like, you'll never find it. When I was at Purdue in graduate school in philosophy, I had to go to the life science library to find this book on home economics by Wendell Berry to get this essay. In that book, he has an essay called The Loss of the University. And he says, traditionally, the university was not for the making of parts of people, right? Good technicians, good engineers, whatever, but it was for making humanity itself, right? And so the vision was to make good humans. And we do that by imparting something of ourselves and this conviction that we're created to be nourished on the good, the true, and the beautiful. So that traditional view has been deflated, right? So I remember Stanley Fish wrote this book in 2010 called Go Save the World on Your Own Time, where he's writing to religious people and political people that say, if you want to, crusade for your religion on the university, or if you want to crusade for your political cause, go do that on your own time, right? The university is about the making of parts of things, right? Good engineers and good teachers. And there's a joke about philosophy, right? Yeah, but it's part of a larger
that's great. That's
deflationary really view of what it means to be human. I had one other thought to your
word
question.
University captures what the university is intended to, out of the diversity of the disciplines, a unified understanding of reality. Right. So it's the building of the whole man rather than compartmentalizing for a job, which is maybe what's the word I'm looking for? I'll leave it since I can't find it.
Well, you're thinking
a post-industrial kind of concept of university. Let's make parts that can fit in a machine, in a factory, in an assembly line or whatever. But the university started to reflect that, as opposed to the original vision and how you described it, as it creates the whole man, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Alicia, did you have a thought?
Well, I was just going to, on what you said, I love the way that was phrased, because I was talking to somebody who actually lives in California and works in tech, and was basically saying that, that AI has been replacing some of the jobs in tech, right? And so what's interesting to me about that is, for years, it was kind of like, okay, if you want good job security, go to school and study computer science, study the computer things. Right. And we told all these people to go and do that. And so they did. And now their jobs are getting replaced. And so it's almost like, when you talk about fragmenting piece, it's like, okay, if we didn't really form the whole person, we formed this, but that's really all because we didn't form the rest, we just formed this, and now that's useless, being taken. Right. Yep. What happens to what else are they going to give? They may not know. They don't know where they fit in. That's all they know is that one lane, and that's taken. So that's what I thought of when you described it in that way.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, and I wonder if what you were going to say too, Paul, is that in spite of the fact that we don't go into philosophy for the money, there's actually great evidence that it's one of the highest paying degrees that you can get, because it does form you into a complete person that can do anything. I mean, when you have a philosophy degree, you can go into business, you can go into speaking, you can go into architecture, whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. So that's a very wrong misconception when it comes to philosophy.
So last comment on this, and it's just even though there is this very real question, what's your ROI? I get this question even in the degree I lead, right? What's the ROI on this? Well, I mean, it's hard to quantify what, living the good life, or at least getting the tools necessary to think critically about the good life. But this is what we've been made for. We've been made to be nourished on the good, the true, and the beautiful, right? And so it's, in some ways, it's the most important thing. And I know I am an apologist for philosophy, because I think it's so deeply connected to our faith and what it means to be human as we pursue Christ, who is the source of goodness, truth, and beauty. Anyhow, and so I'll stop there.
That's good. Well, and Alicia, what you said too reminds me. So when I was typing in this question, what's the difference between a philosopher and a large pizza? I was trying to remember the punchline exactly. So I typed it into Google, and Google's AI search results said studies fundamental questions, whereas a pizza is a dish of flatbread topped with ingredients like tomato, cheese, and at high temperature.
Good job, Google. Way to deliver on that punch.
Good job, Google. Thanks so much for that answer.
The comedians are safe from AI for the time.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is, we're outsourcing our programming, we're outsourcing different jobs, and there's going to be huge job replacement, but we're also outsourcing our thinking to AI as well right now. That's right. And sometimes we're getting very dumb answers like that, and people are no one's going to answer the joke seriously like that, but I think sometimes people do take whatever ChatGPT says as gospel truth. And so what would you say is the danger of that, Paul, and how do we avoid that?
I mean, you already said it. We're outsourcing our thinking. We're outsourcing our humanity. I think C.S. Lewis, is prophetic as always, in his book, The Abolition of Man, right? We become men and women without chest. Like we miss, the rational part of us becomes anemic. The spirited part of us becomes anemic, and we just become men and women that are kind of led by our bellies, like these base passions, right? And so, yeah, I think that's the real fear with AI and tech in general, is that in this irony, as we seek to be like transhuman or post-human, we actually lose the very thing we're trying to capture, is our humanity itself. So it's not all bad, but like I would be probably more pessimistic about it than others, I think, for those reasons specifically.
Yeah, that's good. Got a question here from Rebecca asking, I've heard that Philosophical Foundations for a Christian Worldview is a good beginner text on philosophy. Any other recommendations?
Yeah, I can't reach to it, but I think that's a great one. That's maybe it's a tough intro though, because that's like equivalent to like the MA program as I went through Talbot with J.P. Moreland and William Lane Craig. I mean, I hear them in the classroom, and it's very technical at times, but it's a great resource to have. I think some others that would be helpful. I actually wrote an introduction called "There It Is," philosophy introduction. Good job, Matthew. Where I'm trying to go like a layer down to the normal people and bring them up a little bit. So that could be a good entree. My colleague Paul Copan wrote a book called "Loving Wisdom." That's also a good entree into this. There's lots of good resources. So yeah, those are two.
Those are good. Those are great recommendations to start with, for sure.
Yeah. If you want the intro one, Paul Copan also wrote a little book for new philosophers, which is even more, it's like, thinner, but both of those.
Is that the title?
Really,
I've not read
really
it. The little book.
A little book for new philosophers.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. So, Paul, what other books or projects do you have coming out? What's your next book project?
I'm now 2 years overdue on my current book. So yeah, which is a co-authored book with Ross Inman, this philosopher friend of mine. We're writing a book.
Oh yeah,
actually, it's the sequel. It's going to be a companion to the one you just held up. It will be Philosophical Theology, a Christian Introduction. So we're writing an introductory text on philosophical theology that's been super fun and super rich. So that one's coming. That one will be done, Lord willing, soon and coming out. And then after that, I am working on an edited collection with Paul Copan on a really robust collection of essays from leading philosophers on the argument from beauty. We really think that that's a missing piece in the debate. And so we want the best atheists and the best theists engaged together. So we've got a proposal that's currently at a press that I'm really excited about. And then I'm planning to return to the question of reenchantment. I've got two books. One technical, one more popular, on seeing and delighting in the world. I think that there's more I want to think about on that. And then I want to write a more technical one. I think I'm calling it God and Nature, a Platonic synthesis, where that question you asked about Platonism and why does it matter? I want to kind of, advance like in the technical literature. What does a sacramental universe look like? And why do we need, why do we need to think deeply about that? So that's kind of on the radar, but got to finish the current book and a little behind on that one at the time.
Very cool.
That's exciting.
I'm excited for this God and Nature one, Paul. That sounds really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Well, wanted to also mention we have the PBA Apologetics Conference coming up. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, three of the four here will be speaking. Sorry, Mike, we'll get you one of these years, but Alicia will be there speaking on transgenderism, and Matthew will be there speaking on. Matthew, are you speaking on doubt, right? Or what are you speaking on this year?
Yes, actually, I just realized this is the graphic from last year.
Yeah, that's last year's.
I was looking. I'm like, that didn't look right.
I was like, wait a second.
Yeah,
that doesn't look right.
13 speakers.
I'm speaking on doubt this year. Yeah.
So 13 speakers. Justin Brierly, Jess Wierick, Mary Jo Sharp, and Megan Allman are the plenaries. But we've got all these breakouts where 2 days on PBA's campus, where we just get to engage the goodness, truth, and beauty of the gospel and trying to be a resource, not just to PBA students, but to the local churches in South Florida, where there's not a ton of apologetics or, in the churches. And so it's a really strategic place. So that's happening in less than 2 weeks. So if you're anywhere near, or if you want to come to South Florida in beautiful, in October, where it's perfect, Come join us. And yeah, you can find it at pbaapologetics.com. You can find all the details.
Great. And then I also would love for you to just talk about, I think I have a real screenshot this time from the website of the Masters of Arts, Philosophy of Religion program. So this is what I did and what you teach. You lead this program, and it was, I mean, I'll just say for myself, I loved this program. So if you've been listening to this and you have been interested in studying philosophy at a master's level and getting more education, getting face to face with different teachers, and really spending some time investing in becoming a whole and complete person. I'm actually a complete person. I don't know if you guys knew that. I'm like a full man now, so it's pretty awesome.
I wonder what your girlfriend has to say about that.
Yeah. So yeah, this is a great program. Love getting to study under both of the Pauls, and getting to be less than a mile away from the ocean, which is amazing as well. So a prime location. And there's also hybrid options. So if you want to take classes online as well as intensive classes, there's options to do that as well. And we've got a couple of our hybrid students probably getting near graduation as well too, which is exciting. Some of the ones that have been kind of doing classes on the side for a while now. So that's great. Anything else you want to say about that?
No, that's great. I would just invite any of your listeners, if they're interested in the kinds of things that we are talking about, just shoot me an email. We think that what we're doing is super important for the kingdom. And for those who are interested in doing PhD work in philosophy, for those who are interested in church work or parachurch work, or for those who are just interested in having a public-facing ministry as teachers, as lawyers, as whatever it is that you do, we think we can. You would benefit from this program. So yeah, come check us out. You can find us online. I think that's a link, and you can always email me as well.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Paul, and just appreciate always learning from your wisdom. And for anyone who is new to the stream, feel free to like and subscribe our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook, as we do this once a month, this Apologist live stream. And next month, we will have Dan Patterson on from Australia tuning in. It'll be like 5 a.m. his time or something, but he said he wanted to do it at that time. So I'm happy for that. So it's going to be
this will be great. I don't think I've met Dan yet. So I'm looking forward to that myself.
He is an Australian legend. So it's going to be a great live stream. So we will see you then. And other than that, have a